Hello everyone, good morning, I'm Varun. In this demo, I would like to show a Crud application using Springboot framework, Hibernate ORM with JPA, MySQL as the backend, and JSP as the frontend with validations. The technologies I'll be using to build this application are Eclipse, IDE, Oxygen. One can download the Eclipse from this particular link. MySQL database. If you're a beginner, I suggest to install MySQL Workbench as it gives a nice pictorial view or a UI view representation of the database tables and columns. The version of Spring Boot is 1.5.4 and the Apache Tomcat is 8.5. I'll be running this application on this application server, which is Apache Tomcat 8.5.23, and I'll be building this project using Maven. The Java version is Java 8. So let's proceed with the development of the application. Once you download the Eclipse and unzip it, it will be something like this. Just click on eclipse.exe. Just give few seconds for it to prompt the workspace. It will ask you for the workspace. Click browse and in the C drive create a new folder which is Springboot Hibernate underscore JPA underscore demo. Click enter and click OK. So select this new folder and click launch. Just give few seconds for the Eclipse to open the workspace. Alright, so this is how the initial welcome page looks like. Just close the welcome page, and the first step is to create the Maven project. Go to File, New, and click on Maven project. In case if you don't find the Maven project in this drop down, please go to Other, go to section called Maven and click on Maven project. Click Next. In the first screen, leave all the default options as it is. Click Next. In the second screen, it will ask you for select an archetype. Type web app and select this particular group ID and artifact ID. Click Next. And the group ID I'm giving as com dot let's start coding, and the artifact ID as Spring Boot Hibernate Jpa demo. Click Finish, and you can see on the right hand side corner the Maven project is being created. Just give few seconds for the Maven project to be created. Okay, the Maven project is now created. If you expand this, you'll have Java resources folder. This is where we write all the Java classes coding, and also the source main resources will have the files such as application.properties and the CSS files. And if you further go down and expand source, this is where all our front-end JSPs will be present in the web banner folder. If you notice, initially the index.jsp is an error, and if you open it, it will say the superclass HTTP servlet is not found on the Java build path. So we have to include the dependencies for the to resolve the error. So first step is to include the dependencies. How do I do that? I open the pom.xml and go to a section or tab called pom.xml. Just to save some time, I'm not typing, I'm just copying from the one of the previous applications which I've already built. The first step I do is include the parent segment or the parent node, which will have the group ID of Spring Boot and the version. The next step is to add the necessary dependencies to run this entire application. What are the dependencies I've added? JPA, Web, Jasper, DevTools, Test, Servlet, MySQL connector, and Hibernate validator. These are the various dependencies I've added. Just click on Save. Once you save, click on Save. If you see the error on the index.jsp, it is gone. That's because we have imported all the necessary dependencies. Okay, the first step, we created a pom.xml. The next step is to create the application.properties file. How do I do that? Go to source main resources, right click, new, go to other, go to the section called general, click on file, click on next, and here you give application dot properties, click finish. So we have created the application dot properties. So we have to enter all the requisite properties to run this application. So uh, again, just to save some time, I'm copying from my previous application which I've already built. I'll just run through what are the properties I'll be adding. Okay, if you see in my application.properties, I've added prefix and suffix for the JSP redirect or routing. After the entire application is built, when we click on any of the, or when we enter any of the URL, the controller will route to a particular JSP. To that JSP, this prefix and suffix will be added. The next step is to add the data source properties, which is my SQL properties, and this is the URL. This is my database name. In case you have created a database with a different name, please change that database name. And also, please provide your respective user ID password. And these are the Hibernate properties, which is the dialect, and the DDL auto, which is I'm using update. Okay, just save it. The next step is to create the Java classes. In the Java resources folder, the Java package is missing. For the Java package to be visible, just right click on the project, click on properties, go to Java build path, click on Java build path, and the last two options are unchecked, just check them. Click apply and close. Now one can see the Java package. Okay, the first step is to create in the Java classes. The first step I'll do is to create a model class. I'll right click on Java, new class, give the package name as let's start coding dot spring demo dot model, and the class name I'll give is student. So what is a model class? It's basically the representation of the backend table. So to have persistence, I'll first define the annotations entity. Just to save some time, I'm again copying it from one of my previous applications. Sorry, go to desktop. I'll first add the annotations entity table and the entity listener. Once I add this, it will be an error. We have to import the necessary dependencies. How do we do that? There are two ways. Either you right click and press on quick fix, and import the javax.persistence. Another way is you just press Control Shift O. Control plus Shift plus O. This is a shortcut to import all the dependencies in a one go. So let me press Control Shift O. So we have to select, please select the javax.persistence table, click Finish, and all the dependencies are imported in a one go. The next step is to create the fields, which is the representation of the database table columns. Again, just to save some time, I'll just copy it from ID, and the other fields I'll be defining is, these are the other fields. For the first field I've defined is ID, which is a primary key, hence I've used the annotation @ID, and I'm using a generated value. What it does is whenever a record is being inserted into the database, ID value will be incremented automatically. Similarly, I've defined a field called first name with the size annotation, which says that basically its minimum size should be 3 and max should be 30. Also, the last name similar to the first name annotation. The rest all fields, which is email, country, sex, and section, are used annotation not blank or not empty, which basically means user has to mandatorily or has to enter the details in the front end screen. These fields are mandatory. And also I've used a create date by using the temporal timestamp, temporal type dot timestamp. Let's import all the necessary dependencies. Just press Ctrl Shift O. Always remember to use javax.persistence. The date should be java.util.date, so just take care of it. It should not be SQL date, it should be java.util.date. Click Finish. Okay, so with this I've defined all the fields in my model class: ID, first name, last name, email, country, sex, created at, and section. The next step is to create the getter and setter methods. How do I do that? Click on any of the field, right click, go to source, click on generate getter and setters, and click on select all. Click OK. Now we have getter and setter methods for all the fields. Save. Okay, the model class is now ready. The next step is to create an interface which extends a JPA repository. So how do I do that? Click on any of the package name, right click new, click on interface. The package name should be repository. The name should be student repository. Right, click finish. Okay, this student repository should extend JPA repository, to which I pass student and integer. So first let me import the student one. Quick fix. Import com dot, let's start coding model dot student. Okay, save it. Next, quick fix, import the JPA repository. So with this I've created a student repository. This basically extends the JPA repository to which I'm passing the student model class which we have created just now and the integer class. Alright. Next step is to create the DAO. Right click on any of the package, new, class, give the name as student DAO and the package I'll be using as DAO. Click finish. Okay. The first thing with DAO is to use the annotation @service. Just import the dependency. Okay. Next is I'll auto wire the student repository. Okay. Import the necessary dependencies. Next, define the methods required to save a student, which is public student save, to which I pass student std, and I'll just say return repository dot save, which is I'll say std end. Okay, just import the student repository model class. So first thing, the first method I defined is save a student. Okay, next I'll define search all students. Which is public list, to which I pass student, and define a method called find all. Here I'll return student repository dot find all. Okay, just import the dependency for list, which is util dot, it should be java dot util dot list. Save it. Next is next is get a student by ID. So I'll create public student find one. I'll use integer space ID, and here I'll pass return student repository dot find one. I'll pass ID, and last I'll define a method for deleting a student, which is public void delete student std, and here I'll just copy this dot delete. I'll just say std. Okay, I'll just save it. So with this, my DAO is now ready. So what I did is I've just used the annotation at the rate service, and then I've auto-wired the student repository and created the four methods: save, find all, find one, and delete. The next step is to create the controller. Okay, how do I create the controller? Right click on any of the package, new, class. I'll use the package as a dot controller, and the controller name as student enrollment controller. Okay, click finish. The first thing I'll use is make uses of the annotation at the rate controller. So this is the controller which routes the request and response. So just import this, which is Springworks stereotype.controller. Next step is to auto wire the DAO. Import the necessary dependencies. All right. Okay. The first step I'll do here is the enrollment of a student. So I'll say at the rate request mapping. Here I'll pass value equals / enroll, comma, method equals request method dot get. Okay, then I'll define the method name, which is public string new registration. Here I'll pass model map model. Okay, I'll create object student. Okay, just import the necessary dependencies. Okay, the next step is to add this model dot add attribute student. Okay, then I'll return enroll. Okay, so with this I have defined a method called enroll. I'll just save it. Next, I'll define a method called save. Uh, Again, typing is, I can as well type, but it's taking a bit more time. So what I'll do is I'll just copy this method which I've already defined. I'll run through it. Next is to define a method called save. Just import the necessary dependencies. Okay, so what the save does is, so what it saves after, first the first page, enroll page, will open up, and after the student enters the details and presses save, this method will be called. Here it will first check for the validations. If you remember, we have defined certain validations in the model class, so it will check if all these validations are being fulfilled. If there are no errors, then it will redirect to view students. If there are errors, it will redirect back to the original page and with the error message. So I will show you, once all the application is built, I'll show you how this thing will work. The next step is to define the method view students. So this will redirect to view students. So we have to define a request mapping with this particular view students. Again, just to save some time, I've defined a method called view students. Here, this redirect will come to this particular method, and this method will be executed. So this will get all the students, and this method will call the student DAO dot find all, which we have defined in the DAO. Please import the necessary dependencies. This list should be java.util.list. Okay, save. So once the student is saved, it will call the DAO method save, and it will redirect to view students, which will display all the pages. Next, I have to define two more methods, which is the edit student and the save. So the next step I'll do is to define the edit student based on a particular ID, which will look something like this. Okay, so after the students are displayed, once we click on the edit button, it will come to this particular method will be called. So what it will do, it will basically call the DAO method find one and returns that particular student. All right, and it will return to the JSP call edit student. Okay, next we define this edit student save or edit save, which is, so whatever details that are displayed on the edit student, that after making the changes, we will press the save button, then this particular method will be called. So this is how this particular method is defined. Here we'll set back the new values to the student and again save it back to the database using the DAO save method. First we'll find that student and get the details and set these details from the page to this particular student and again save it back to the database. And last is the delete student. Okay, so this is the last method. Whenever the delete button is pressed, this particular method will be called and it will delete the student from the database by calling the student DAO dot delete, the data access method called delete. Okay, so with this we have defined all the methods in the controller. The last thing we have to define in the controller is the attributes, which is sections and countries. These are the model attributes which I'll be using in the JSP. So I've defined the model attributes which I'll be using in the JSPs. Just save it. So with this, my controller is also done. Okay. So till now I've defined a model class, student repository, a DAO class, and the student enrollment controller. Uh, Coming to the code, I mean, as I'm pasting it, you can also do the same thing because I've uploaded the code in the GitHub repository. So you just go to this Springboot Hibernate Jpa JSP MySQL, and if you download this, I've included all the code which I'm copying and pasting it. It's up to you. Either you want to type it, or you can first time you can copy paste from this particular code. So you can find the code in these sections and you can just follow the steps whatever I'm saying in this particular video. Okay, so till now I've defined the model class, I've defined the student repository, DAO, and the controller. The next is to define the JSPs, and also the JSPs we have to include the static content. So okay, the static content, what I'll do is I'll just copy and paste it in the resources folder. So now we have a static content which is the custom.css and the main.css, which will be used by the JSPs. Alright, next I have to define the JSPs. Again, JSPs, writing the code for JSPs will take more time. What I'll do is I'll just copy paste them, the existing code, and I'll run through them so that I can explain in a smaller short video. Otherwise typing JSPs will take a lot of time and I'll not be able to cover in a single video. So what are the JSPs I'll be using? I'll be using the enroll.jsp. This is the first page. Whenever this first page is displayed, you can observe that in this enroll.jsp I've used a form, and the model attribute I'm using is a student, the command name is student, and the action as save. And if you observe each field, I've defined each field, and for each field I've defined a as error, or which is the form errors. So what it will do is, if any of the validations fail, then error will be thrown and the routing will be sent back to the enroll.jsp. So this is the field, or this is the section responsible for checking the errors. If any errors are there, the control is again sent back to the enroll.jsp with the error message. We will check that shortly. Similarly, I have defined last name also with the errors. I have defined email with the errors. Also, I have defined country, which is a select field. It also has errors. And last, again, it's a sex is a radio button. It also has errors, and also section. So for each field, I've defined the errors. And when the user presses on submit button, the action will be called, which is save. And once the save is called, it will go to the controller and it will call this particular method. So that is about the enroll.jsp. Alright, so All my JSPs are ready. I've included the static content or the CSS files. So now let's build this application. Before deploying this application onto the Tomcat server, let's do a maven build. Right click on the project, run as maven build. Do a clean install. Click run. You can check the console if there are any errors. Okay, it's saying no compiler is provided in this environment. As I built a new code, the new code has to be compiled, for which we need a JDK. In my current project, JRE is configured, so which will not compile the new code. For that, what I should do is to include a JDK. How do I do that? Go to Window, Preferences, go to Java, install JREs. Here, the JRE option is checked. Uncheck this and click on Add. Select Standard VM. Click on Next. In the directory, I need to select the JDK, which is in my C program files, Java, JDK 1.8. I have to select the folder which has the bin. Click on OK. Click Finish. Now select the JDK. Apply and close. Now let's do a maven build again. Run as maven build. Now the build is success. Alright. Okay. Before I deploy onto the Tomcat server, we should add the Springboot class, or the class which runs the Springboot framework. So right click, new class, it should be in the root folder, so it should be Springboot Hibernate Jpa demo. Okay, and give the class name as student application. Yeah, student application. Click, I'll just say enrollment application. Click finish. So this is my class which will run the entire applications. For this, first thing I'll add is Spring Boot application annotation. Okay, the next thing I'll add is I'll enable the JPA auditing. Okay, then okay, first let me do the necessary imports. Quick fix. Also import the necessary dependencies for JPA auditing. Alright, next let's define the public static method. Public static void main string space args. Okay, student enrollment application control v dot it should be spring application dot run, and first I should pass the first parameter. I should pass the class. The second parameter I'll just leave as it is. save. So this is the application which will start the Spring Boot framework. Now let's add the Tomcat server. In the servers, let me delete my old Tomcat server. When we download the Tomcat, it will be a zip file. Just unzip it. Okay. Now let's add this Tomcat direct server to our application. In the servers, click on the link, go to Apache, Tomcat 8.5 server, click on next, click on browse, go to the Apache Tomcat, select the one which has the bin directory, click finish. Just give some time for it to get added. Alright, so with this, the Tomcat application server is added. Now before deploying it, let's do a maven build again just to ensure everything is okay without any errors. Okay, the maven build is fine. Now let's run my application. You remember the student enrollment application? Just right click on that, run as Java application, and check in the console. The Spring Boot is started and the application has started now without any errors. Let me run the application. Localhost enroll. So this is my first page. So whenever I enter the URL enroll, what will happen? It will come to the controller. It will come to the controller and it will look for the request / enroll, and this method will be executed. This method is in turn forwards it to the enroll.jsp. You remember we've added the prefix and suffix, so it will look in this particular directory, it will look for enroll.jsp. So the enroll.jsp will be executed. So this is how my enroll.jsp looks like. Now if I don't enter anything in this enroll.jsp, I told you that I have used form errors. So what will happen if I don't enter anything? I'll click register. So it says the first name size must be between 3 and 30. Last name size must be between 3 and 30. Email may not be empty. Country may not be empty. Similarly, the other fields may not be empty. So let me enter the first name, Varun cbv.cpv India mail budget, and click on register. Now I've entered all the fields. What will happen when I click on register? When I click on register, action, save, it will the request will be / save. So let's see. When I click on register, it will execute / save. Okay, and it will come to this particular method called save. It will save the student in the database and it will redirect to the page called viewstudents.jsp. That is what's happening here. Okay, there are already students. Let me edit the latest one. Now This is the view students.jsp. Now let me edit when I click on edit, what will happen? It will go to the edit student, but that particular ID. So it will go to the edit student method. It will populate all the values and route it to the edit student.jsp. That is what happening here. So here I'll change the name as Navdeep. I'll change the email ID Navdeep and just say edit. Now see, one can see that first name is changed and also the email is changed. So once I click on edit save, it will execute this particular method, which is it will get the details from the edit student JSP, get all the details and again save it back to the database and again reroute it to the view students.jsp. What will happen if I say delete? Let's see. Now I want to delete the row called varun.cpv. When I click on delete, it will come to this particular method called delete id, and it will delete that particular student and then reroute it back to the view students. Just press on delete. So it will delete that student and it will reroute it. I have not included delete all students. Maybe you guys can try it. It's simple. Just delete all the students and you can use that. You can try it by yourself. I have not included in this demo. So that's it. So this is how we should build a Crud application using Springboot Hibernate with JPA and MySQL as the backend and with JSP as the front end with validations. So hope this demo will be helpful to the people who want to learn a similar who want to learn how to build a similar application. Thank you.